This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. Today is Monday, the 5th of May. We are here to talk about the last week in Ottawa city politics. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Hello, hello.
Hello. I've got butterkeep pecan coffee for this episode of the pod.
Lord.
I know,
Why
right?
do
I don't know
you
what's
drink
going to
this
happen.
stuff? That is terrible.
You're all
gonna
pumped
happen.
up, right?
Right.
If I had known you were a flavored coffee guy, I don't know if I could have been friends with you for more than a decade. I'm just saying.
My number 2 coffee of the day.
Well,
Always flavored.
Okay, so today's Monday. Everyone have a good weekend?
Yeah, great.
That was great. Weather was awesome
It
on
was?
the sun.
It was like
Took
our...
the train.
So did I.
Oh,
So we will
about
talk more about
Okay.
that. What else did anyone get up to? I got up to the Chio ride, the CN ride for Chio.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah,
was
that's
fun.
a great ride. I haven't done that in a long time. I am, training for the 10K run.
Ooh.
I don't know if you could actually characterize the way I'm moving as running, but I'm going to. I'm going to be in the Tamarack Race Weekend at the end of May because I love that event because I love doing stuff with other people. So I look forward to that.
It's just a great. So you could just feel like spring in the air now in the capital this time of
And
year.
smell
especially May. I saw like they're getting ready for the Tulip Festival at Dow's Lake. I was down there. So things are really buzzing around Ottawa right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Nice.
Listen, let's jump into it. So a big issue at City Hall this week was around what happens to the revenue from red light cameras.
Who knows?
Yes.
No
who
one knows.
So actually, can we just start? And John, where do most people assume this money goes? All those cameras.
Go.
Well, let me just say at the beginning before we talk about this, I was at my computer last night while watching the NHL playoffs, trying to go through what exactly, to your point, Neil, where the money has been going and where the understanding of it has been, where it should go.
That's a
That
nice
makes any sense.
contrast. Like trying to figure out that or watching the Jets score with 1.6
Yeah,
seconds
I was going
left. But
insane
okay.
watching both. Anyway, so some people would say, like, of course, all the money would go to road safety initiatives because these are road safety pieces of technology. Maybe there's others out there who don't follow City Hall as much, just assume it goes into one big pot at City Hall and gets doled out every budget cycle. So generally, high level, I think those are the two ideas about where the money goes.
And that's what councillors say, right? I'm sorry, the first one. Councillors say that this is for road safety.
Yeah.
And why? Because of the motion.
But Greg, so we go back and take our DeLorean back in time here a bit. To 2019, there was a motion at council that talked about the road safety action plan and how it would be funded, at least in part or maybe in full. We don't know about this yet. To have a certain amount of money go to road safety initiatives at the city. Now, I had to write down some stuff here to even like work it out in my brain because I couldn't understand some of the stuff, the numbers that weren't written down on paper somewhere. So one of the questions is, out of the reporting that's happened in the news over the past month, suggested that they had $40 million that have come in over the past, 5 years or something like that, through the red light camera program, and it was not going into road safety initiatives. It's been going, a lot of it's been going into general revenue, as it turns out. But what has happened is, and I know I'm kind of explaining this in a very roundabout way, but behind the scenes, city staff said, you know what? We're going to say anything that the city brings in over $11.75 million in revenue from the red light cameras will go to road safety programs. Now, the confusion here is in that 2019 motion, and we were talking about this before the pod, it suggests that all the money, certainly from the new red light cameras that came in from 2020 and beyond, would go to road safety initiatives.
Yeah. And I think the bylaw says
That's a motion.
this is a motion. Yeah. All revenue from automated enforcement be allocated to the road safety program. And there's a bunch of stuff in the middle, but yeah.
But yeah, so when you hear that, what do you assume? You're assuming everything, not just the red light camera, but the speed camera, the bus camera, everything going forward is going to go to speed safety. You know why people assume that? Because that's what the words say. That is the English language meaning of the words, but that's not city speak.
No, because as it turns out, behind the scenes, it was not written down anywhere because the auditor general even mentioned this during the audit, is that they couldn't find any evidence that behind the scenes city staff were saying, you know what, $11.75 million we'll take for general revenue. Anything above that will go to road safety programs. That's what was in the mind of city staff.
Can I just clarify one data point here? And that's that when we think about traffic cameras, I mean, most of us just assume it's one big pot, but there's two pots, right? There is red light cameras and there are speed cameras, okay? And in fact, the Auditor General's audit was all about red light cameras only, okay? And it's important to talk about the numbers. So in 2024, the red light cameras netted about $11 million in revenue. The speed cameras netted about $28 million. So it's close to 39 in total.
But just to make this like a little bit more confusing so that our listeners and viewers can be even more engaged in this, but like in the meeting that was had last week, the auditor said that they did find that somebody said it anyway, that the revenue from automated speed cameras actually was being mostly transferred to these road safety issues, right? Yeah.
Mostly.
I guess so. Mostly, not all of it, right?
Well, that was my big question.
Yeah.
Like, what's actually happening on the speed camera side? And I have no
There's
idea.
so many questions. There's so many questions.
Yeah.
I came out of these meetings. I came out of reading the report, the terrible, like I don't blame reporters for this, but the confusing media stories, and then a very confusing meeting that I felt clarified very little for me.
It sounded like in part that like everyone was able to fill in the blanks outside of that meeting before that meeting happened. So I don't know, like listening to the councillors' questions, they're asking about stuff in the report. That's fine. But I still couldn't get my head around when staff earmarked the $11.75 million to go to general revenue. When that happened, and it sounds like, based on what I heard from the Auditor General's office, they couldn't find evidence of that happening from city staff.
Well,
either.
this is the key point, and I'm just going to reiterate that. So with the red light cameras, and only the red light cameras, again, not the speed cameras, red light cameras, the first $11.75 million goes to general revenues.
And where does that say that?
Yeah, exactly, nowhere. And then another $3 million goes to police. So let's call that $15 million, right?
I think the police goes from the speed camera. That's what I think it goes from.
I don't.
Okay, well.
But anyways, the point is that there's this big chunk of money that, okay, let's just call it 11.75. The first 11.75 goes to general revenues. And what we've seen is that the amount of money that's collected from red light cameras is lower than that amount. So that like there's no money left over for road safety issues.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that, according to staff, was because, the pandemic happened, fewer cars on the road. I think people are starting to become aware of where the cameras are in the city. Certainly when we talk about photo radar, I think, I know where the photo radar is. And that's a good thing. And we could talk about whether these technology projects are helpful in doing the job that we intended them to do. But I think it speaks to like the problem of us trying to talk this out is complicated because at City Hall, photo radar, automated enforcement is still, I think it's accepted, but by some questioned still, but certainly in public, the perception in some places is it's a money grab.
And do you think that's why staff kept it secret, that they were just holding back almost $12 million for general revenue?
I don't know. Like if you listen to what the Auditor General said, they said no one was in the wrong. It's just like this has happened.
And also she did say like we found money was being spent on road and safety issues. It's not that like the city was not spending money on it.
Yes.
It said that it didn't go into a reserve fund, which is also complicated. But she said like they said no, there is money being spent on this. How much? It's very unclear.
But so clarity is really important in this conversation, because if there's a perception in the city, but by some, that's a cash grab, photo radar, red light cameras, then City Hall has to make sure this is communicated very, very well.
Well, let's ask. I mean, is this a cash grab?
I don't know. I mean, the 11.75, maybe, I mean, I am actually for lots of cameras. They're a cheap way to make our streets safer as opposed to hiring police officers because that is what every single councillor hears all the time. They want police to look for speeders and other people who are causing traffic problems. That's not happening. That is not good. So these cameras are good. And so the fact that you say, oh, you know where the cameras are, good, because it means that people will slow down and follow the rules. That is what we want.
Well, for 100 meters.
Sure. Well, if it's near a school or in an intersection or, yeah, I mean, you can't have them every 2 meters, right? But this idea that money then this is why I don't think it should be secret where they are. I think people should know where they are, especially around school zones. But this idea that now we find out we have no idea, no one can follow where the money is going, that is really bad for public trust, something that the Auditor General's report specifically talked about. And it does make it sound like a bit of a cash grab. I mean, and between us, we're not even agreeing on where the speed camera money goes. I think, the Auditor General did say a lot of that is being spent on, is being transferred to the reserve fund. I did not go through the numbers on that. So how much of it? So yeah, it is a cash grab, but is it a communications failure? Giant fail, huge fail on everyone's part. And it pains me to say this because I kind of have a little girl crush on Natalie Goujon, the auditor, but that was not a helpful report in a lot of ways. It was helpful in that it said things like, there's $10 million of revenue that could have been dedicated to the road safety fund, and we can't find any documentation on how that happens. But considering how complex the background is, what is going on, you really need a much clearer report, a step-by-step report, and not to make a pitch for my own new career, but there are people who you can give those reports to and say, hey, what do you think the headline is going to be out of this report? And you know what it would be? It would be the headlines that came out of that newspaper. So no one should have been surprised by those stories, I don't think.
No, and this is part of the problem. So all credit to Natalie Goujon, who's putting out reports ahead of time of those meetings. I think that's awesome. In fact, I think I heard her say during the meeting that this is super unique all across Canada.
She's the only one who does it.
The only one. So
and she puts them out about, what is it, 9 days in advance?
I think a week at least.
A week.
Yeah,
right?
because most auditors will release the report as they present it, right?
Yeah. So, once upon a time at Ottawa City Hall, there would be a lockup actually for reporters and councillors where everything would be answered. And so when the stories hit, they're actually have, in a way, both sides of the story, have any clarification on the numbers. The problem with the way the Auditor General does it now, and it's not really a problem, but here's where the hiccup is. She publishes the report. Reporters are out there looking at the report and trying to parse the information. And according to the Auditor General, she's not allowed to answer any questions between the time the report's published to the time of the meeting. And that's a big problem.
Yes.
Because if I can, as a reporter, ask a question for clarity, then hopefully, number one, I'm not writing the story, but, pressures are that maybe an editor wants
Or you
the
think
story.
you are, or do you think you do understand it?
Or you
that
think
was
you
a
do
weekend
understand
reporter at CBC. She's like, all right, here's some lines that I'm going to quote out of a report, and that's great. And also, these people are not, there's not that many beat reporters anymore. Like in the olden days, Jon and I probably had people we could call secretly. Like they weren't really supposed to talk to us, but you could say am I understanding this report right? And they're like, I don't think it's that. Hang on a minute. And someone will help you, right? But that's not how that happens now. And so I don't know. I liked the lockup, frankly.
I don't mind the lockup because I want to be right. That's the most important thing for me as a reporter. Like it's so important to be right, not to be first with some kind of rewriting of our AG report.
Yeah.
Like I just want to be right and make sure the audience is completely clear about what these numbers mean.
Yeah.
And so to get to that, you really need to ask the questions.
And now
to
what's
the
happened
experts.
is people are so confused. The original CBC story has a very long correction on it. No one has tried to rewrite the whole story, and no one is now going to go. No one's going to write the story now. I hope they do, but I haven't seen somebody trying to clarify it. The Citizen did write a story. I shouldn't say that they did write one, but it is really complicated, and the people only hear the first time around. No one ever hears the correction part, right? And so I don't think they can do it this way, or those reports have to if the Auditor General is going to still release them ahead of time, which I hope she does, because I think it's great.
Yep.
But they have to start thinking in a more strategic way on how are reporters, how is someone who doesn't know anything about this and never covers City Hall, how are they going to read this report?
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is that we just have so little visibility into regular city spending that that an issue like this just confuses it. So, for instance, there must be a line item for road safety measures, okay, that existed well before these cameras came on the scene. And the intention of that motion from council was that you've got your base funding, and then all of the additional revenues from the cameras will go on top of that. And so what we should be looking for is that base funding plus like 40 million a year, which was the number last year. But the problem is we don't even know what the base funding is. And so we've got a real problem with transparency in our budget that persists to this day, despite, all the
Or on
attempts.
the revenue line, and maybe it says this, I shouldn't say this because I didn't look, but like in the revenue part of it, does it say, oh, this is the money that comes from the red camera light,
Well, it just underscores the point, like with this program in particular and road safety, Joanne's right. It's like one of the top 3 issues probably for any communities at City Hall. Be uber transparent, be ultra transparent about what money is coming in, what they're projecting, what they plan to spend it on. And that goes a long way.
But they don't want to do that because what people want is more money spent on it, and they don't want to say, "Oh, we're spending actually not as much as you might have thought."
I know, but they just got to put
no,
up the
I
numbers.
know. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to item 2, which is the Municipal Accountability Act that's coming forward at Queen's Park. So the Ontario government has reintroduced legislation to create a consistent code of conduct across municipalities in the province. Now, Joanne, this is a story that has a strong Ottawa link that you have been following for many years. Can you tell us what this is all about?
5.5 years.
5.5.
Yeah. So this, I'm going to go back to stories about Rick Shirelli harassing his staff for many years, multiple people, women. The Integrity Commissioner found in 2 different reports that he committed incomprehensible acts of harassment, including sexual harassment. It was a horrible story. I talked to many dozens of women, 8 on the record. Many people were complainants. That story spurred a lot of pressure to change the rules so that there was a way to get rid of councillors who had engaged in like really unacceptable behavior. Every time I went on the radio with Jon and Neil on CBC or whatever, we would get calls saying like, how is this guy still a councillor?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to say, there is no way to not make him a councillor.
Right.
So we have a lot of rules over the years about if you break any financial rules, you can be kicked out. You know, there was a story about in Toronto, a councillor overspent on his celebration party, and he literally lost his seat. But if you have harassed women over years as an official, there's no way to get rid of you. There's no behavior-based rules like that. And people have been pressuring the Ontario government to do this. Sadly, it's not only Rick Shirelli who is engaged in this kind of behavior, but a very high-profile case. Stephen Blais, who is a Liberal MPP and who used to sit beside Shirelli at council, he has brought forward a private member's bill, I believe 3 different times to try to change this. One of times it got really close and then it got killed. And my understanding, everyone's understanding, is that came from the Premier's office, Premier Ford. But finally, like the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, councillors across Ontario have like passed motions. Everybody wants these changed. This is like including the councillors who it would be actually affecting. Say there has to be a way to remove people. And so finally, there was a motion. There was a bill tabled last December. It died on the order table when the provincial election was called. Been reintroduced.
And was that sponsored by the government?
This is a government bill.
Okay.
It has some really good things in it. It's like a code of conduct, like a uniform code of conduct for the entire province. Because remember, there are 444 municipalities, and about 400 of them, you have no idea what's happening in them. And when you look, it's terrible. It's like all kinds of things are happening. Mandatory training for both integrity commissioners and for councillors, and oversight of like by the provincial integrity commissioner of like who people choose, right? There's been a lot of conflict of interest, even in integrity commissioners who end up being the lawyers for the same city, like really bad stuff. So these are all good. Now, the big ticket item though for this bill is how do you get rid of a councillor? And the method that the province is proposing is, all right, there is an integrity commissioner's investigation at the local level, like we had here. And so then if the integrity commissioner says, this stuff is so bad, like people have been hurt, and such as through workplace harassment, this person is not able to do their job, they've lost public trust, I'm going to recommend that they be removed. That goes up to the provincial integrity commissioner. They do their own review again, do the whole thing again. And then if the provincial IC says, yeah, this person should go, then it has to come back to a vote of council. And the council must vote unanimously to remove this person. Yeah, it's crazy. And also, you can't be away.
Including the person.
No, not including the person.
Okay. That person is
no, that person is not. But I mean, like, you can't say, like, say you're really uncomfortable, I don't want to vote for this. You're not allowed to be away. You have to be there. Like, and so, like, if you are away, then, and the vote is happening while one councillor gets up and goes to the bathroom, or one councillor just leaves,
a lot.
or one councillor just leaves early, then that vote doesn't count. So what people are saying is, this is never going to happen. You just need one buddy on council to keep you on the whole time. It's ridiculous. And also, councillors don't even want this. Like, and John, maybe you can step in because I'm talking a lot, but this is a topic that's very close to my heart. I mean, I've been working on these stories for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It is unbelievable the damage that one person can do to many people's careers and well-being. It just makes me so mad. And so, but do you remember when we went back to council, like when this was all happening, 2019 and 2020? At one point, council had to vote whether to give Rick Shirelli an unlimited leave of absence for his like medical leave, which they said no. But even that, they were uncomfortable. Councillors don't want, like good councillors anyway, they don't want to be like making decisions about the guy who sits next to them. You know what I mean? Like, sure, say you're an accountant and you've broken the rules and there's a, whatever the professional association is that makes decisions about whether you should be an accountant or not, but they're not the accountant sitting in the desk next to you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So what do you think back to that event?
Well,
like,
maybe councillors would want to. And I'm certainly in the Shirelli case, I bet there's a lot of councillors around that horseshoe who would have wanted to, if they had the power to, cast a vote as to whether to keep their colleague.
But do you think
not.
they could have done it unanimously? Can't think of a couple who might have just been
I don't think
gone?
so.
That wouldn't have worked. It would have
so.
never worked. So this is useless.
Well, I mean, there's more layers to this, right? What's being proposed. You talked and you did a really good job. By the way, all the viewers and listeners, these are the Shirelli case stories that you broke as a City Hall reporter, and we're thankful for that. But I mean, there's a bigger process here that's being proposed to the province. You talked about the local integrity commissioners bumping it up to a provincial. So there's a layer of scrutiny, 2 layers of scrutiny before the next layer of scrutiny, the last layer, comes to the local council. So I think it's better. And I think if it comes to council, they have some assurances that it's being investigated by professionals who have deemed, if it's a really serious violation, that they can make a decision based on that information. So I think that's a little bit different compared to what would have been 6 years ago.
When I think of like, okay, in Ottawa, maybe like if it came to council, I don't even know if it can come multiple times to council. Like say like you don't have everybody there. Can you bring it another time? So in Ottawa, that was a huge, very high profile case. If you'd had 1 or 2 councillors who skedaddled, like people would write about them and shame them, right?
I think that's where the tension is.
Yes, except that like, again, I don't think people understand what is happening in smaller municipalities. Really bad stuff. And no one's going to actually chase those people down, right? And so it's now, so in Toronto and Ottawa, maybe Mississauga, like some of the bigger municipalities, maybe you would have some transparency. Everywhere else, it's going to make no difference.
So this is called the Municipal Accountability Act, but it's really about municipal councillors.
Yes.
The behaviour.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it really doesn't do anything further on the accountability of city halls.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it was ever meant to. And probably it's poorly named. I think it should be actually
Bad councillor act.
Yes.
Or something.
Okay. When we're talking about councillor behavior, surely one of the issues that I do not believe is in here that I would argue probably should is around conflict of interest. And, we've seen a number of issues come to a council table where councillors have received contributions for their campaigns from proponents of those projects.
Do you mean developers?
I mean developers, yes. I do mean developers because that is the number one issue. Like that is the largest issue that comes before city councils, right? About land use and whether individuals or corporations are given regulatory changes that allow them to develop that land and, quite frankly, do well out of it. Should we be looking for legislation from the province that addresses this conflict of issue?
Well,
the conflict of interest.
You want to start?
I'll start with the basic question. What's a developer? Yeah. I think this is a question that's really befuddled. And it might be obvious. Well, a company that comes in and builds a piece of land and makes money off it. Okay. Like, what are the subcontractors for that developer? Communications firms. Like, where does it end to be called a developer? That's been one question I know in our time at City Hall that's befuddled some councillors because they've tried to explore this issue about conflict of interest, not at a provincial law level, but just in general. So does the province care? Is the question.
No.
That is.
Like they like meddling with what's going on the streets of cities. I think in with this government, but I don't know. My suspicion is this is as far as they're going to get right now.
Well, first of all, that would have to be in the Municipal Elections Act. That doesn't belong here. That who can donate, right? So that's not in this.
Well, I'm not saying who donates. I'm saying what I would say is, shouldn't councillors have to declare a conflict of interest?
All right. I have a lot to
and
say
even
about this.
recuse themselves from voting.
That's crazy. No, I don't agree with that. So I'm going to say that I think that if I can toot my own horn, no one has written more about developer donations, certainly in this room and probably not in the city than I have, including in 2014. My reporting out of that 2014 election literally helped lead to the removal of unions and corporations from being able to donate. I found a company gave twice the amount that was allowed, with no penalty. It was crazy times. Or for example, what you found is companies were giving through their companies, and then all the executives were also giving, so they're kind of double dipping.
Wait, do we have you to blame for the third party fundraisers?
Well,
too, then,
I did not suggest that. I was very mad. They're like, well, we'll take this up. Then we added a bunch of other stupid things.
Yeah.
But I would also say, so a couple of things. One, you're now going to ask a bunch of individuals in a class to not be able to donate money. So that's weird. Or you're saying there's a conflict if anyone has ever voted or has ever given you money. So for example, I live in a ward now where there is a big, a little bit of controversy over a supportive housing unit that's going to be built. People who live on the street don't like it. If they've given to my if they've given to my campaign, do I not get to vote on that? Do I have to declare a conflict? It gets a little bit weird, right? You can't just say it's only for people in the development industry and not other industries.
No. But here's my point. When City Hall makes decisions on a piece of land, they can increase the value of it significantly, correct? By changing the zoning. And so, and we saw this with the Greenbelt in the Toronto area, right? Where the changes enacted by the province resulting in $8 billion in added value. So, clearly there's an interest in certain landowners in influencing that vote as much as possible. And the question is it material? Should councillors be declaring their conflict of interest here?
I don't know that that's a conflict, because it is a hard thing to say that any person who gives you money then is a conflict. My example from before is also a conflict. If somebody doesn't want a building behind them and they've given you money to vote, do you say, well, geez, my neighborhood is against this, so I'm going to be out of it? It actually materially changes land value. I would also say that then you're going down a slippery slope, because it's mostly we're talking about developers. We're not talking about other people.
No, we're talking all about developers.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
And so when developers, for example, they give money to a community center. They fund a lot of community events. Should we not take any of their money? I don't know how we're going to get the civic hospital built without the developer money. When you say the parts that this is believe me, I'm not an apologist for developers, but on the one hand, we want to vilify them. On the other hand, when we need money for public stuff, they're the only people who give us any money, right? So that's a tricky thing. One thing I think we could look at is the lobby registry and connecting it to the Municipal Elections Act. And that is it's kind of weird. If you're on the lobby registry, if you have an active file on the lobby registry, you're not a councillor's not even allowed to take a cup of coffee from them, but they can take $1,200 from that person for a campaign. So is there a time around if you have a lobby, if you're in the lobby registry, then you can't donate, but then there's a space of time, right? The other thing is this pains me to say that, but a lot of people don't care. We care. I care. But I remember writing a story about how Jean Cloutier raised half of his donation money in one lunch, where 12 developers, executives went, gave the max. It was a big story, a big splashy story, and then he won no problem, right? So that's the other issue.
Joanne, I'm going to challenge you on that. And this is for our audience. Joanne Chianello says that people don't care. If you care, please do. Let us know. I think that people do.
I think people care.
Come on.
But
did any of your readers care?
I don't know. I don't think they care enough. I don't think they care enough with their vote.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? You know what I mean?
That's
I think
exactly
it's interesting. I think it's a little sultry. I think it's a little dramatic. Ooh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't think they're going to the ballot box with that on.
And you can see where they care. If I was ever running, I would never take money from developers, because I know that there are some folks who are going to say, oh, then you're in a conflict of interest. I also want to be able to meet with developers at any time, because if things are happening in your ward, you don't want to be worried that you're going to be looking as if you're in a conflict meeting with them. No, you want to be able to talk it through what is happening in your own ward, right? But there's wards where I don't think Centertown and Kitchissippi and Hintonburg and the places with a lot of intensification development, people care more. And we just see that with the voting, and we see that with the people who run in those wards, the people who say, I'm not going to take that money because they know that that's an issue in their ward. But obviously, Alta Vista did not really matter too much.
Good to know.
Let's move on to issue number 3, which is the OC Transpo free weekend. So who took the bus or train this weekend?
I took the Trillium line for one trip. And I got to tell you, so I live very close to the Trillium line.
You live on the Trillium line. I'm just going to say it's like right in your front door.
And so I see the ridership. I can't quantify it, but from a qualitative point of view, I see the riders take the train. And I can say, like, when I took the train on the weekend, it was busy. It was busy beyond what I've seen before. And so that is to say, maybe people were taking advantage. It was a beautiful day going down to Dow's Lake. A lot of people were getting in and off at Dow's Lake Station. So it's great to see people trying it out. So I found it a little busy. What about you, Neil?
I took it. Last week I'd said I thought about going out to the airport on the train, and people wrote in and said, go out to the airport. So I had to.
Did you go take a suitcase?
You know what? I didn't, but I mimicked as if I would take a suitcase. So I was thinking about that, right? And let me just tell you about the experience. I found it quite interesting, and it actually changed my views on the train to the airport. So first of all, to John's point, there were a lot of other people trying it out. You know, when I was on particularly that little airport shuttle, well, it's not a shuttle, it's a train. That airport leg, it was jam-packed, which was really nice to see. First of all, the trains were very comfortable. I think you mentioned that, Joanne, previously. What was interesting was that it was easy enough to transfer with luggage between trains. There's elevators to get you from one platform to the other. So that was really good. I wasn't sure that there was enough room in the train to put luggage if you had it. So that's an issue I'd want to look at again. One thing I'll mention is that at South Keys, where you get off the line 2 and onto the airport leg, it's really confusing. I mean, you get off the platform and you get off the train onto the platform. And you go, where do I go now? And the answer is you go nowhere. You just stay right where you are. Your train leaves and another one comes up and fetches you. But
there should be better
signage. And there were a lot of people in the same boat as me looking around saying, where do I go?
That classic look.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
So I did find the wait between trains like longer than I would have thought. It was usually pushing like 10 minutes. And, you typically think these things are going to be less than 5.
I think that's going to be the biggest problem with the Trillium line is the waiting.
Yeah.
And if there's any issue anywhere along the line, that waiting is going to be a long time.
Absolutely. Well, that's the other thing. The trains kind of felt slow too, right? Like you're just kind of moving along and not at the pace that you would expect a train to move at. And I think that's certainly on the Trillium line, that southern line. The problem is that we've got one track, and so it has to accommodate trains in both directions. But here's kind of my main conclusion. What surprised me was that to get from downtown to the airport, you would pay your $4 fare, which is pretty reasonable, and then it took me about 50 minutes, so 50 minutes. Now, if I were to take an Uber from downtown, that would cost me $30, and it would take about 20 minutes. So the question becomes, for a $26 saving, is that worth 30 minutes of your time? And I think, to be honest, that for a lot of people, it probably is, right?
Well, it depends, right? If you're like taking a business trip, like, you're just yourself, you're already downtown, you can get on it. It's pretty easy. You just have a little carry-on. That's fine. If you're a family heading out to Florida, you're not going to spend.
No, not if you're 2 or 3 or 4.
Winter.
That's not happening.
Right. So so what I found is that I think there's a very small use case for it. That's unfortunately, solo travelers that have a lot of time on their hands.
Maybe. And I think,
or in winter when the roads might be worse.
Can I just say that before you jump in, John?
Yeah.
Overall, it was better than I expected. So I personally would consider it as an option to
I
get
like
to
those
or
trains.
from.
I like the trains are very nice.
The trains are very comfortable. It's smooth. I agree with you, Neil. It seems slower. I wasn't doing a kilometer test or anything like that, but they seem a little bit slower, but super comfortable. I think about people who are going to use the airport spur coming to downtown. People who are on business often have expense accounts, and sometimes time is money.
And you have to take 3 trains.
And you have to take 3 trains, so you might just expense your cab or Uber ride and get downtown quicker. So I don't know. I'm curious to see, the stats over after a year and see how things are going, or maybe 2 years.
Okay. Can we just talk about the weekend of free transit itself for a minute? And just
I forgot.
The cons. Well, you know what?
Sorry.
Not only did you, but it wasn't very well advertised, and people have commented on that. I have to admit that I actually jumped on a bus, and it still had the $4 charge like in the window, right? So I'm like, am I supposed to be paying here? Am I gonna get in trouble? Yeah.
You're arguing. No, it's free.
So that was, it was great to see, and great to see a lot of people using it, trying it out. I would have been much happier if this was done during the week. I felt it was a little bit begrudging, a little bit kind of cheaping out when we're probably not making a lot of revenue anyways.
Well, part of that, yes, it'd be nice to do it 5 days or a 7-day free on transit. The fact of the matter is the city can't afford it.
Why are we doing it? Why did we do it for the weekend?
Well, if you're the upper government,
what is the point of that?
If you're an upper government and you're seeing a municipality who's coming to you with hat in hand all the time for transit dough, seeing them give away $200,000 to $300,000 worth of transit on a weekend,
this is a real question. I actually, because I was not paying as much attention to city stuff as I usually would in the month, last month. What was the point of this free weekend of transit?
Well, I think partly it's because they changed the routes, number one. We didn't really talk about the buses, right?
Yeah.
And so it gave people an opportunity to test out how the new route configuration was going to work with LRT.
You have to do that during the week.
People will learn.
When people are working.
Yeah, exactly.
But the fact, if people were just trying out the transit system on the weekend, that's a positive, right? Sure. Okay, it costs a little bit, 6 figures, I think it was. So that's a positive. Will they do it again? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe good question.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, no, not the lightning round.
Lightning round.
We're terrible.
Joanne, you're up first. No, we're going to watch the time.
Right.
So, first topic, Councillor Sean Menard is being investigated for violating election spending rules in 2022. And so the city is spending $84,000 on an audit to look into an alleged $200 miscalculation in his spending. So is this justified, or is this just plain bonkers?
Okay, kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So yeah, it seems crazy because it is a lot of money for what is probably, well, it says in a mistake. It might not even be a mistake. I think Sean Menard is saying, this is not a mistake. This is actually, you guys are just reading this wrong. And in fact, I think that the audit committee actually said, no, this does not need to be investigated. But Ted Phillips, who is the development GR guy, who is
possibly former, right?
Former. I apologize. Yes, he worked for Tiger for many years. He appealed it, and now it's going to court. So, is it all politically motivated? Sure. But I don't care. Is it right? Is it wrong? In the end, I would rather we spend the money, because for many, many years, the rules around who gets elected, how they get elected. I mean, you talked about it earlier with, developer donations. People don't care enough, and they no, wait. And a lot of people were let off with things that they actually broke the rules on. So I would rather we spend the money to enforce the rules, because city politics matter, and if we say they matter, then we need to put our money where our mouth is.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, actually, my God. So,
all
okay,
right.
I didn't know this was a lightning round with judgment at the end. Okay.
I don't know. Look. Oh, well, okay. It's fair enough. Let's move on to the next topic. John, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, to my surprise, they have an open mic item on their agenda. And so if anyone wants to address the committee, they can come up and talk about whatever their subject is. Should all committees be doing this?
Oh, man, that sounds
don't even say that.
Dangerous. Look, ARAC, yes, has that open mic session. It's been going on for years.
That's from Amalgamation.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the spirit of it is great. Come out, tell us what's on your mind. Now, can you imagine that happening 3 to 4 times a week?
Like a planning committee?
Planning committee. I mean, look.
Neil would be there every single week.
We'd be sitting there. Oh, my God. Here comes Neil again. And this is the problem,
with the conflict of interest arguments.
In all seriousness, that would be the problem, because, the frequent flyers would come back. God bless you, frequent flyers, for being engaged in municipal government.
You're welcome.
But, but they'll be tuned out by the people making the decisions around the table. So I like the spirit of it. Yeah. I don't think it's very actionable.
But, okay, so sorry. I'm going to follow up here. A follow-up question. That's that. How do people like myself that actually will delegate at city council and the committees, how do we address an issue that's not on the agenda?
I always say find something on an agenda and try to, as best as you can, to stretch it to make it fit that agenda.
Okay,
fair.
Joanne, at an in-camera meeting, council passed it was a public motion to exempt a senior position from the bilingualism policies. In other words, they're about to make a senior position hire that is presumably for someone that doesn't speak both languages.
Yes.
So does this mean that we're getting closer to hiring a planning manager?
Yes, my understanding from secret sources, not at City Hall, is that it is the new GM of planning, a woman, for the first time, I believe.
Wow.
Well, I mean, Vivi Chi is the acting chief of planning. It has taken almost 3 years. Steve Willis left in August of 2022. That is, I think, unconscionable during a time when we're supposedly having a housing crisis that they have not been able to find someone. So finally, yes, it's the person I think it is. Very excited. Not somebody from in the city. So I thought, actually, this is Monday and that was last Wednesday, was it? I thought the announcement would be made by now. So maybe it was by the time we get off this meeting. So that'll be really great. And hopefully we can talk about that at our next podcast.
Okay. John, so should we be concerned about overriding the bilingualism policy here?
No, but this is an Anglophone speaking, right? And so people who are Francophone or maybe they care about the bilingualism issues in the city might be concerned. But look, like Joanne said, we've been without a GM of planning for how long? 3 years. And so at some point, you just need to get people in those positions to lead. And so in a case like this, I think they need someone in there like ASAP was like 3 years ago, but especially now. So yeah, I think we should still be aware of that and look at our senior management. Now, I know in the motion...
And make sure that somebody in senior management and planning can speak French.
Right, especially maybe an assistant GM or something like that. But the motion also talks about the person who will be in the job will have to take some French lessons too. And that's important too.
Right. Okay. Joanne, I want to come back to our previous discussion many weeks ago about Twitter.
This is the text I sent you, right? I knew this was going to come back to haunt me. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So yes, that's right. You said, I'm having second thoughts about this. But so during the federal election, we saw that there was that the platform X, Twitter, that it was pushing pro-conservative content. So with that in mind, and in fact, there's a lot of allegations.
And not just pro-conservative, like part of it is pro, like, alt-right too, right?
Alt-right, yes. And
I think we should,
and we should also clarify that there's a lot. I've heard that this actually happened during the American election too.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, given that context, that Twitter or X is open to some sort, appears to be open to, let's call it abuse. Should the city be thinking twice about posting there?
Yeah, and so I was never thrilled with my earlier answer that we should stay, and still I've gone back after we had our little exchange. I still went back to Blue Sky, where I have my 15 people, or I'm just kidding, but very few people and lots of people on Twitter. I still think I would say I still realize that the city, I understand why they want to push things out on Twitter. I still do that. I still get lots more outreach when I put things on Twitter than anything else. But we double down on what John had said, and that is you got to look to see what are you doing on Twitter. Like we should be having a deeper dive into how helpful Twitter is. Are we reaching people? What is it like? Because I think more and more it is obvious that that the city should not be on it, and that probably I should not be on it, but I have 20,000 followers.
Well, actually, Henry, can you just pull up the City of Ottawa Twitter website? Like how much engagement are we getting on a post these days?
Henry has the answer.
So the City of Ottawa's most recent post, which is from 50 minutes ago, to be fair, has 2 likes.
How about the one before that?
The one before that has 0.
But that's likes. Does it show how many people viewed it?
So it has 2,000 views.
Yeah, 2,000 views is nothing.
Okay, but you know what? Where else would 2,000 people see it though? That is the only part where I'm actually.
I think
the only bit where I'm worried about leaving Twitter.
I think the answer then is you just get off all social media.
Yeah.
Like we can talk about Facebook. Is that any better?
No, that's terrible.
Is it? I mean, Blue Sky. This is just the honeymoon period.
Yes.
Who knows what's going to happen there?
Because when everybody gets off Twitter, then it'll be moved over.
But quickly, what if we just got off social media as a city? If you want information, come to the city website. A lot of people have if you have Twitter, you have the internet in some capacity.
We could also just spam people on their phones, like if there's a really important message. No, I'm not kidding. I heard from Yasser Naqvi 25 times. I think the city could call you a few times. Don't forget to pay your taxes.
Maybe you control the message if you just rely on people.
Yeah.
If you're updating,
I'm
the
actually
website.
more comfortable with that because I just don't see that there's another platform to go to that even if it's better now, it's not going to stay
Right.
better.
Well, Substack.
Well, there's Substack. Well, we could talk about Substack too, but I don't think we have time in the
No,
lightning
we do
round.
not. Okay, listen. That is it for this week. So
That is longer than we've ever gone. I thought it was going to be 20 minutes this time. I have to say that every week.
Just very briefly, looking at next week, I had a look at the council calendar. It's very light, extremely light. Did you guys have a chance to look? Did you notice anything of any interest?
What if we say no? Isn't it bad if we say nope,
No.
nothing happened at City Hall?
Nothing.
But look, no, but 'tis the season. We're coming up to, usually council takes a down gear as we get closer to July. So
Mhm.
I always, when I was covering City Hall, looking for reports to come in through June, they're trying to get some decisions made. And we're looking for ahead to the 26th budget too at this point.
Yes. Okay.
So I think this is a little calm before the storm.
Yeah.
June is always a bit controversial.
Okay. So we should expect something
I-
to flare up.
Oh, maybe.
Or
I don't know.
Yeah,
To be
okay.
honest, this council
Yeah.
never does really that much.
Yeah.
So I don't think it does.
Well, on that note.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. All right.
Send your email to, send your tweets to.
Yeah. All right, Henry, can you bring us over here, please? All right. So that's it for this week. Actually, in 3 weeks' time from now, we will be doing a live taping of the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel podcast, and we hope that you can join us. That will be on Tuesday, the 27th of May in the evening in downtown Ottawa. If you want to get tickets, you can find them at betterottawa.ca. We're always keen to hear from you, so please leave us a comment. And even better, if you're on Apple or Spotify, if you could rate us and give us a ranking, that would be fantastic. I'm happy to report we are on both of those platforms a 5-star podcast
Woohoo.
from the 10 people that rated us.
Heyo. All right. There's 4 of us in this room. So
We'll buy you all a drink if you come.
No. So I know a lot of people don't bother to rate, but if you could, we would really appreciate that. I want to thank our panelists, Joanne and Jon. I would like to thank our producer, Henry.
Good job, Henry.
And I would like to thank all of you for joining us. We will see you next week.